Welcome, my emerging expat. You're tuned in to Let's Move to Portugal. I'm producer Dan, and I have the distinct honor of bringing you YouTube travelers and our resident Portugal experts, ExpatsEverywhere's Josh and Kaylee. Each week, they'll inspire, they'll educate, and they'll accompany you on your journey to Portuguese residency. This week on Let's Move to Portugal, join us as we explore the emotional journey of relocating with Louisa, longtime friend and key member of the Good Morning Portugal community. We'll delve into her insights on adapting to life in Portugal since her move in 2017 and the importance of building a supportive community.
What is up, expats and travelers alike? Welcome back to the podcast. This is season 2, episode 7. I'm trying something a little different.
Yes. So for all of you watching with video, we're doing our introduction on video now.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
Kaylee, how you doing?
The usual question. Well, as I'm sure you can hear, listener, I still have that cold that I think we talked about last week that just lingers. So yeah, I might have a winter voice like Phoebe from Friends for all of you Friends fans.
I have no idea what you're referencing, but I'm sure I've seen the episode.
Yes, you've definitely seen the episode. I made him watch all 10 seasons.
Yeah. Okay, so another week has passed, and maybe not as much has happened with the Portuguese government.
Shocking.
Yeah, I mean, there have been rumblings of things. There have been, certainly rumors, nothing confirmed. So I don't know how much we need to go into that. I think really what we need to do is wait until the end of the month to see what happens in their next meeting.
Yeah, too much speculation. So we'll hold off, and hopefully in a couple weeks we'll have a little more clarity.
Yeah. And just to give you, listener, an idea what we're talking about in case you've missed it, the Prime Minister was embroiled in a scandal, and he resigned. And then the president rejected the resignation, which has thrown kind of the biggest thing for foreigners right now moving to Portugal is the NHR regime. It's thrown that into a bit of a mess. We don't know if NHR is going to end at the end of 2023. We assume it will, but there are rumors that it could kick on until sometime in 2024.
Hard to say.
Yes.
So we'll update when we know a little more concrete, I guess.
Correct. All right. We are on the eve of Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is not celebrated here in Portugal. However, Americans do celebrate it. And
yes.
We're going to do
So there
that.
are different parties that go on.
Yep.
They might be a little hard to find, or they could be a little expensive depending on which one you're doing. But
Expensive's right.
Right. But we are putting on one, so we're excited about that. And, we capped it so it's not super big, but people are cooking and bringing authentic Thanksgiving food. So Thanksgiving is actually my favorite holiday. I think it's probably because of the food. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it's a potluck, so we wanted to do something a little different and share the burden of cooking because
Isn't that what you do for Thanksgiving?
Tough.
You should share it, right?
You should definitely share it.
Not everyone does, I suppose, but
And then some people could bring money for the meat. So
Yeah.
no one's having to cook the turkey. We are getting turkey from Pingados, not
Yes.
an ad.
no. I wish they sponsored us. That would be nice.
That'd be kind of cool, actually.
So we're just doing like turkey breast that's already cooked, and they do offer full turkeys and even stuffed turkeys, but not this time of year. It's for Christmas and for New Year. So they give you like a small window. You pre-order and you get that for those holidays, but obviously they don't do it for Thanksgiving. So it's a bit of a bummer because like right now you can see, you could get a whole turkey, like they'll cook it for you and everything, but I can't pick it up until like December 23rd or something. So it's like, what a bummer. So they do offer that, but we're going to just go the route where they're going to like marinate and cook the turkey breasts, and that'll be good.
And most of the people that we know are experiencing most of the Americans we know are experiencing Thanksgiving to some degree while here, whether it be at our party or another one they committed to before they found out about ours.
Yeah.
Updates on the YouTubes.
The YouTubes, yes. Okay. We just put out the video of the 12 top cities to live in 2024. So
Yes.
check those out. Some of them might shock you.
Surprises, some surprise omissions. Not all of them are technically cities, I think, because of the population size, population density. We had some kind of towns represented in there. But yeah,
There's a lot that's up and coming. So a lot show promise for 2024. So that's important to highlight.
Absolutely. And one of the criteria for the selection of the towns and cities was that there are some places that have gotten really expensive and other places that are still good values. So we wanted to highlight the cities that are good values. It was more about value, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it was value, amenities, and other
healthcare, things like that we add in there.
Well, we talk about healthcare,
briefly,
but it wasn't like we selected things based on their healthcare, because some of the cities we selected or towns do not have amazing healthcare, and
which is something to consider.
You need to be forewarned.
But it's kind of just a quick little, it's 12 different ones, and they're quick little nuggets, I guess. So obviously, if you want to see more, then we have breakdowns in different video form. But it's kind of just a little bit on each to see if that interests you.
Yep.
So that was a good one.
The vertical community update. So we still have a little bit of time left in the ARU process. That's ARU. Basically, it has to do with the building being located in a zone that has some tax benefits if you rehabilitate it. If you fix up anything that's like 30 years or older, and there's a certain criteria to where your property needs to fit that list before the renovations, and then after the renovations, you have to do enough things to get this benefit. We're still doing a few things with that, and then we'll have the official thumbs up from the architect builder to start the actual demolition. So we can't wait to swing a hammer there. And I'm excited about that. But I'm also excited about our guest, because she's a repeat guest that we've had on the channel before, not someone that we've had on the podcast yet. So allowing Kaylee and her to have a little more space to chat.
Yeah, because we do love to chat. So Louisa has been on our channel twice to talk about just real life things in Portugal. Yeah. She has a family here. They've been here for several years. They've lived in different places. They have a good handle on what it's like to be a family, but like mold and needing a car, the climate, like just, I don't know, real life things. So we've talked about these things on the YouTube channel, but this was fun to get her on the podcast this time because it's been a while. It's been a couple of years.
Yep. What are some of her other like kind of expertises as a person here in Portugal?
Yeah,
she has a job.
She's a coach. She's like a life coach, and she helps people. She is in astrology and different things like that. I mean, she explains a little bit, so she can. I'll let her do that. But yeah, she obviously is a mother. But then she and Carl, her husband, who's on Good Morning Portugal, they have a YouTube channel, and they chat about things, all expat life and Portugal life as well. And so they have that going on. Everything they do is online. So coaching and quite a lot of different things.
And if you haven't heard of Good Morning Portugal, go check that out, because there are a lot of long format conversations similar to this one, but different, that you can check out so you can learn more about Portugal. Yeah?
Yes. So with that being said, is there anything else? Or we jump into my chat with Louisa?
I think we should right after this sponsor.
All right.
Let's go.
Louisa, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast because for our listener, if you haven't seen on YouTube, we have a couple videos where you and I chat about the most important things of Portugal on the YouTube channel. But now we have you on the podcast just to have a follow-up. It's been a couple of years since you've been on the channel. So
seriously,
how long have you been? I know, gosh, we have to have you back on. But for those who haven't seen you on our YouTube channel, just let our listener know, how long have you been living in Portugal?
Just over 6 years. So we've just had our 6th year anniversary, I guess. Yeah, it's gone so fast. It's really hard to keep track of it, in fact.
Yeah, that's exciting. 6 years. And can you just let us know where you moved from and who you moved with?
Yep, I moved with my husband and 2 children. And then within about 14 months, we had another child in Portugal. When we first came out here, we didn't know where we were going. So we rented a place for about a month and a half just on the outskirts of Tomar. And we used that as a crash pad so that we could drive around and get a real feel for where our new spiritual home was going to be in Portugal. And the funny thing was we just couldn't decide. We just drove around and around and around. And then my husband was doing some work with a guy, like quite an exciting social media project. And he was required to move to the sort of greater Lisbon area. And so from Tamar, we headed down to Araweira, which is just south of the river. A really cool place. And so we lived there for about 9 or 10 months. And then by that time I was quite pregnant, and we did some house sitting back in the Tamar area. Then we moved up to a place called Korea, which gets mixed up with Korea quite a lot. You know, people are like, oh, wow, you've lived in Korea. That sounds really exciting. But it's this like very small town in between Aveiro and Coimbra. And we really loved there. We were there during the pandemic. And yes, we were there for about 18 months or so. And then from there, we moved to the Silver Coast, just inland, not far from Caldas de Rainha. And then we've been residing in São Martinho de Porto, which is right by the sea. We've been there for 2 years. So it's in the Silver Coast, 11 kilometers south of Nazaré and about 45 minutes drive from Lisbon.
So I think
So
that's
it's really
interesting
cool.
because when a lot of people look to move to Portugal, they start with Lisbon and then Porto and then maybe Braga, Coimbra, Algarve, those places come up.
Yeah.
But you stayed away mainly from those big hotspot areas. Why was that?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly deliberate. I mean, Lisbon, we had the chance to actually live in Lisbon, but like when we visited, first of all, I had a pushchair. Our youngest was coming up to 2, but not really a strong walker. And so we stayed in Lisbon for a short while and used a stroller. I think that's what Americans call it, isn't it? A stroller, a pushchair.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really treacherous. It was really difficult. There's so many hills, and we weren't used to the calçadas, the kind of pavements they had. And I hadn't got used to wearing pumps or sneakers, whatever you call them in the States. I was still in that stage of wearing my DM boots, my Dr. Martin long boots, which I loved, but actually proved really slippery on the calçadas in the winter. And so it just felt a little bit difficult, you know, maneuvering. She was just out of the sling stage where I used to wear her. It was easy then, but with a pushchair, a stroller, it was so hard to get up and down the curbs. And so it just didn't feel very practical. So when we went to Araweira, it was very flat and really easy to maneuver. And it was so easy to get into Lisbon. It's a fantastic area, in fact.
And you have more space there. It's a bit more open.
Yeah. And there's a lot of life. There's a lot of really good beaches. You know, for people that do want to live in and around Lisbon, I really recommend the South Bank, you know, like the other side. Not many people look there. You know, most people go to Cascais and all those like really glamorous areas. But south of the river, you get a bit more, I think you get a bit more choice. It's a bit more chilled. The coast of Caparica is really quite lively as a coast. It reminds me a bit of some of the resorts we had in the UK, some of our sort of kiss me quick type, you know, like you get, I don't know if you have kiss me quick hats. I don't know if that's just something that you have at a beach in the UK. It's kind of like, it can be seen as a bit tacky, you know, there's lots of gimmicks, you know how beaches get.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you have gimmicky beaches? I'm sure
We
you must do.
Yeah, we do. Like beach towns, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, on the East Coast and such.
Yeah, Costa Caparica is a very sort of like beach town. You know, it's quite densely populated, lots of bars and things like that. But we were just a little bit further south from there. But the motorways, the roads, it's all so easy, and the train just went straight up to Lisbon really, really quickly. So it was a great location.
Yeah, that's.
But
perfect.
yeah, you're right. We've kind of stayed from the coast to central, and we've been really from just south of Lisbon up just a little bit more north than Coimbra. And we just tend to stay in that little location. I don't know, we just really like it.
You like it, yeah. Does it feel like there's just less tourists or less people in general, more local? Like, what do you like about it?
Well, right now, I mean, we're actually in quite a busy tourist area. There's loads and loads of English speakers. You know, our Portuguese has not come on very well. There are loads and loads of expats where we live. And the Portuguese are quite used to us, and they often speak English. Lots of them speak French. And of course, lots of European settlers often speak French as a second language. So, it's quite a good mix. Like our beach town has just gone really quiet now, and it'll be quiet now for about another 3 months or so, and it'll start to liven up again. But Yeah, I mean that's really busy, and then we've got Caldas da Rainha where we met you actually, you and Josh and your lovely daughter, and Caldas has a lot of expats as well. But then when we're driving around and about, you get a bit more of a taste of Portugal. So yeah, it's not as Portuguese as we'd like it to be probably. Like we went recently on a bit of a road trip, and we went inland and we went to Torres. I can't remember which one it was, Torres Vedra, I think. And it felt like all of a sudden we were in Portugal. It felt foreign, and it doesn't really feel foreign to us where we are. It's not as busy and densely populated as the Algarve, but it's getting more popular, the Silver Coast.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people are asking about the Silver Coast area now as an option, a place to move to. Would you say any of these places are not family friendly, or all the places that you've lived, have they felt family friendly since you were moving around with your family?
we tend to pick places that have got the, like when we were in Korea, we were living down the road from this amazing park. And so I used to push the kids, walk the dog, and we'd like go to this park, and it had loads of places to picnic and stuff. So that was great. Where we're living now, we can walk to the beach in 20 minutes. We could walk a bit quicker if we weren't walking with the kids.
Always.
We could drive or cycle in about 4 or 5 minutes. It's really, really close. We've got a choice of 3 beaches, in fact. We can just walk up the road and onto the cliffs so we've got loads of sort of beachy type adventure things. And then even closer, about 3 minutes up the road, we've got a little bit of forest, and they've put a forest park in. You know how the Portuguese love to make these lovely little parque de merendas, where people can meet, and there's picnic tables, barbecue areas, and a little park. So we've got lots of things that we can walk to. We've got a train station we can walk to and hop on a train, which goes everywhere.
That's so nice.
Yeah, it's really perfect. Like, our eldest is 12, our youngest is turning 5 next week. They're getting to a stage where they want to explore a little bit more, have a bit more freedom, but not get like completely lost in it. So like when we go to Caldas, which is a much bigger town, we play in the park, and we're really aware of where our kids are, because it's a much bigger place. But where we are in São Martinho de Porto, it's a small little town, and everyone kind of knows each other. Even though we get loads of tourists, we get lots of people like waving at us and saying, "Oh, hello," and it's such a small scale, so it feels like our kids have got a really great space to grow into without them getting too, I don't know, without it being too dangerous.
Yeah, it's a safe space.
Yeah, and like the Silver Coast. As the coastline goes, it's not a great place to swim in general. There are some very terrifying beaches where people do lose their lives. In fact, just like 11 kilometers from us, there's a stretch, 5 kilometers up the road, there's a stretch where there's a really ferocious kind of riptide. And of course, if you're foreign, you might not even know that, but all the locals know not to go swimming there. But on the coastline, there's this tiny little, and it looks like a little seashell or a little croissant. If you were to blow up the map, it looks like there's this little semicircle, and it's a tiny little bay. And so we live in the bay, and so all the wild water is kind of outside, and then there's this little inlet which goes into a river. So it's really, really safe. And all 3 of our children have learnt to swim in the sea rather than in a pool. And we go there sort of every couple of days.
Yeah, that's
and we
great.
don't go when it's really hot. We wait until about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So it's a bit calmer. We don't lose them on the beach. We can see them all the time. And they've just been learning to swim in the sea, in the ocean. I never thought that was going to be possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then speaking of weather, what does the weather get like if it gets hot and busy during the summer, but you're talking about how it's going to turn into a bit of a sleepy town now that we're approaching winter. So what's the difference?
Well, I mean, it's like we recently went back to Aroeira, just south of Lisbon. It is definitely warmer there. And that's only an hour and a half down the coast. It's definitely warmer. But during the summer, we get really nice temperatures in the early 30s, probably late 20s, early 30s. If we drive into Caldas da Rainha or further inland, maybe to Tamar, that temperature goes up from say 33 to 38.
It can get hot.
It's really hot.
Mhm.
But because we're on the coast, we've got this beautiful Atlantic breeze, which keeps us cool. So you don't realize just how hot it is. You know, it feels bearable.
Mhm.
Whereas when we're in Araguaira, it was too hot for me and my colouring and our kids. They were wilting. It was a bit too hot.
Turning into lobsters.
Yeah, it's like
you can't get the sunscreen on fast enough.
Exactly. And it's like we wouldn't probably go to the Algarve in the height of summer. It's not for us. But it's great in the winter. But in the winter here at the moment, it does get very damp. You know, we are on the Atlantic coast, and sometimes you get this big fog that comes in. But usually around about 11 o'clock in the morning, if it hasn't already, you know, the fog will suddenly, like the sun will come out, the clouds will go, the fog will disappear. So right now it's a little bit overcast in the mornings, and then mid-morning it brightens up, unless it's, you know, going to rain for the day. And then the evenings are cooler. You know, we've already started putting on our dehumidifiers, which obviously I spoke at great length. I'm known as that woman that moans about the damp.
Yes.
Do you know, so many people have asked me about that, Kaylee. They've said, oh my God, you're the damp woman.
Okay, so for our listener, just to give a little reference, we got in a really long conversation about the dampness and what that does to your sheets and your clothes and mold and everything on our video on YouTube. So if you want to really dig into that and you haven't heard that before, then check out that interview. It'll be really similar to this, but you know, in the style. Yeah. But so people say that you're the damp lady. It was such good information though, and we get asked that all the time. I mean, especially in the northern part, you know, everyone's always worried about humidity and mold and what that's like on the inside. So what can you do to make sure that, you know, it doesn't happen to you?
Well, we've already started. So we've already started to spray down our windows, the insides of our cupboards with neat, like clear vinegar. You can buy it in all the cleaning sections. So don't look for it in the vinegar section in your supermarket, because you won't find the right kind. But if you go to the cleaning section, there's always the vinegar. Some of them even come in spray bottles, and you just spray it around you. I mean, don't spray it onto, I'm not taking responsibility if you spray it onto, don't do it onto wallpaper. But if you've got painted surfaces, which thankfully for us, all of our houses have got some kind of white paint, we just lightly spray it and then sponge it down just with a slightly damp cloth, wipe it off, all the mold disappears. And you might do it a couple of times a year. Like in other areas we've had to do it a lot more, but we're in a fairly new house by Portuguese standards. Our house that we're living in, which we're renting, is about 30 years old, which I think by American standards is a really old house.
Yeah, but here, definitely, they're not that old.
And so it's quite well insulated, but it doesn't have very good, airflow. So all we do every morning, pretty much, even if it's raining, we open all the windows for a good couple of hours, let all the fresh air kind of come in, then we shut it down. And then we put the dehumidifiers on. So we've got one upstairs, one downstairs, and we can move it around a bit. I mean, we tend to follow each other around the house quite a bit. So wherever the people are is where we put the dehumidifiers. It's the humans that really are creating
cause the problems.
Yeah. So it's just, just be vigilant with it. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that the Portuguese, they start lighting their fires at home around the end of October. And I was thinking, it's just so hot. Like, why would they be doing that? And I think they get drying out their houses as soon as possible. So you want to start as soon as possible, almost before it's a problem. And then you can manage it all year.
Yeah. Because once it already sets in, it's really hard, right?
Yeah.
To get rid of it. But yeah, okay. So we won't go too long into that because I think we talked about it.
I was telling you about the winter here because, like, one of the things that we notice is even if it does get cold in your homes, because these homes aren't really built for keeping the heat in, they're built to keep the heat out. What I notice is we are actually warmer outside sometimes. So we tend to spend a lot more time outside actually in the winter. And then, when we come in, we just whack the heating on. We've got like these tiny little heaters and we just heat the rooms we're in. I know people that have had pellet burners and all sorts of different things. If you can do it without using electricity, you're much better off because the electricity prices are quite large. But if you dehumidify, it automatically, as you're taking out the damp from the room, that automatically raises the temperature.
Yeah.
So it's worth doing that as a first port of call.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Good advice. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, because you said you've been here, around 6 years, so you have seen a lot of changes in Portugal. And so I wanted to chat with you. What was Portugal like when you first arrived? And what are some of, like, I guess, the biggest changes that you've seen?
That's a really good question. It's hard to completely gauge because, well, we've kind of moved around quite a bit. So it's really hard to say what's really changed because we can't really compare the different places we've lived in as such. But one thing that I've noticed is there's a lot more expats here now than there were. And the technology that we use is different just in 6 years. So when we came out, both Carl and I had smartphones. And I think we did have Spotify, and we might have used a little bit of Netflix, and we might use a bit of YouTube. But like normal TV was still quite a big thing, in our, where we came from and over here. And I've noticed that the technology that people are using is changing what it's like to be an expat. So for instance, I know you and Josh have lived in loads of different countries for many, many years. And I've lived in some other countries. And I noticed that when I was living in other countries, I actually listened to the local radio. I listened to the local television. I used to get newspapers. People don't really buy newspapers anymore necessarily. We get all of our news in our local language, the one that we actually speak. Everything pops up on our smartphones, and we've got these great, years ago, I'd actually go around with a dictionary in my purse. Don't need to anymore.
You have your phone. Yeah.
Yeah, I got my phone and it's bashed up. I mean, that's something I've noticed is your phones take a lot of damage on these hard floors. But, technology has really made it easier to be an expat abroad, but that does also disconnect us because we're not having to think so hard to speak the language. We're not having to make so many changes ourselves. And it's like you can live the life you're already used to. So for instance, if we don't want to watch Portuguese television, we just don't have to watch it. I mean, we're not massive TV watchers, but kids like to watch a few things, and we're not even using TV anymore. Like we use YouTube or Netflix. I mean, that's completely changed the landscape. And although that doesn't have anything directly, that's not directly related to being an expat. But like if we go and stay in an Airbnb, there's Netflix, you just log into your account. So you're not necessarily having as much of a Portuguese experience anymore, is my honest feeling.
Yeah. Because
we just keep all of our podcasts, all the things we are used to, they just come with us.
Yeah.
They're on demand. So I think we have to make a bit more of an effort or try a bit harder or just get used to the fact that I think things are actually just becoming more international.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, just becoming more international, because I would think that even in places like, outside of Portugal, if you move to, let's say, Italy, or not even in Europe, but somewhere in Asia, it's the same thing, right? You get disconnected from like what local stuff was because you don't need it anymore. You can have everything right at your fingertips in the language that you want or the type of, platform that you want to use. And it's just right there. So, but it does disconnect us as people as well. Too, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So that's tough, making sure that we're still creating relationships and networking and such and actual face-to-face contact rather than it just being all digital.
Exactly. And of course, do you have Uber where you are in Porto?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we don't have it here, which is great. So if we want to get a takeout, we actually go to the local takeout place and we converse and we chat and, we do all the things. But when we go away and we go to Lisbon, all of a sudden you don't even need to speak to somebody. You just dial it up, whatever you want, straight from your phone. So again, there's those ways as well that, there's just so many ways. And like our kids, as they're growing up, they're not going to know any different. But of course, we know.
Right.
And I'm sure most of your listeners will know what it was like, when they travel to foreign places. So the landscape is changing.
Yeah. It reminds me, do your kids watch the show Bluey? I know
Yes,
Bluey's a big one.
we
for
love
the kids.
Bluey. Bluey's amazing.
Bluey's a good one. So there's the one episode of Bluey where they're playing with their grandfather, and he's supposed to be ordering food on the phone, and he tries to call, and they're like, "No, you don't call. We don't talk to you." And then he tries to order it, and he goes to pick it up, and they're like, "What are you doing? Go back home. You sit in your home, and we bring it." And then when like Bingo tries to deliver it, he's like, "Oh, hello, how are you tonight?" And she's like, "We don't talk," So it's just a joke on like, it's so true. Now you can literally get what you need without talking to anyone. So you have to be careful to making sure that you're connecting with people, which actually brings me to my next question.
Okay.
You're talking about lots of expats where you live. So how do you connect with them, and how do you build community so that you're actually doing face-to-face kind of things with the expats and the locals?
Well, I think a lot of, it's quite easy for me because of what my husband Carl does. Can I just say quickly?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so he, you might know him from Good Morning Portugal. So that's a channel. And, he's basically organising like discovery weekends. He's a weekly meetup, and he's always doing stuff within the community. So I don't need to go looking for it because he kind of brings it to us in sometimes quite an inappropriate and annoying way. Like, we'll be minding our own businesses, just wanting to do like a family thing. And then all of a sudden it's, oh God, yeah. But so we don't have to really try hard. It automatically gives us a lot of introductions. But I think, most people when they, Facebook has really helped, hasn't it? Like when I first moved over or were thinking of moving over, we went onto Facebook and all we could really find about Portugal was the forum or the group, Pure Portugal. That's where we used to go. And it had lots of comments and advice for people, especially if they were sort of homesteaders, really wanting to set up some kind of homestead. But there's all these groups that have sprung up, or maybe I've just got more used to finding them. I don't know which it is. I think
more groups have sprung up. Yeah,
exactly.
Just because it's become more popular and people are seeking more information.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I think it's in our culture now. I think people are naturally wanting to create content, to share content, to help people. We are naturally in this kind of share economy at the moment. I think we're moving out of, it's almost like we're kind of coming into this flat shared economy where everyone is adding to the collective somehow, And so whenever I go to a new place, I always look for the local expat or the local town group. And, that's, I put in a little message, best opticians, I need to get my eyes tested. And there's loads and I can choose, but I just thought it would be good to get an idea from people, So I think things like Facebook have played a really important role. And just getting out and about, like if we go to the beach and we're just chatting, we hear somebody speaking English, or somebody comes, they hear us speaking English, we might converse. Or if people have got kids similar age, you get chatting at a park. Before you know it, you've got a nice flow, a nice relationship. But I do think there is a bit of a difficulty. People, have you heard that phrase? It's like taking heaven by storm, where you kind of rush into something and you don't really use much discernment. I think when people are away, and you guys might have found this yourself, but people make a beeline for you if they realize you're a fellow foreigner, and that they want to go into this sort of ultra friendly mode, which is really, really nice. And so I noticed lots of people form friendships really fast. But that doesn't mean to say they're going to be long relationships. It's like people intensely fall into something, and then I notice they quite often intensely fall away. Because expats, as a general rule, I think are slightly different people. If we were normal, we'd all probably stay at home. I'm not saying we're not normal.
Yeah. But we have something that connects us in that sense, like our mindset and the way that we think and what we want to do, the lifestyle we want to live, right? So you gravitate towards that when you live in a new country. I tell this to people as well, but that doesn't mean like you, just because you're an expat and you have the same mindset there, that you're going to be best friends, because you might have nothing else in common besides that.
Exactly.
So instead of being so intense on like, everything's new, I'm trying to build community, you're an expat and we think the same. After you get to know them a little more, you might think it's not that I don't like you, it's just that I've realized we just don't have much in common. Like,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure you'll find this as well. a lot of expats, I mean, it might not be true at the moment. There might be, I mean, I've seen some more families coming over, but traditionally expats have been retirees. The people that have done their work, they're not looking to work. They want to maximize their pensions. They want to make their money go a bit further, and they want to live in a beautiful, warm place where they don't have to worry about the cold. Most people feel healthier in the warmth, don't they? Especially if they've got something like arthritis or something, so I can see why it attracts a lot of older people. And of course, if you're being paired with older couples, like one of the things I found is when I've made friends with people from a different generation and a different stage in their life, they don't have things to do all day, whereas we have things.
We have kids
all day long
and work, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We have to work. Both of us have to work. We've got kids and we have to have family, like spend time with our family and appreciate it. And so, we're at a really different pace. And so I have struggled over the years to meet up with people that are more, like doing similar things. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get on with them.
Yeah.
Just because, I didn't like that in England, and maybe I'm just a massive complainer. Quite possible, isn't it? You know how some people, they instantly make friends with everyone else at the school run, and everyone becomes friends because you're all at the same stage. That, I don't know. I like to make friends with people because we've got things in common, like hobbies, interests,
I think that means it'll last longer generally,
Yeah.
right? Just because you have kids the same age and maybe you work and you have kids and they're the same age doesn't mean that it's going to be this lifelong relationship and friendship, right?
Exactly.
If there's no foundation, nothing to stand on, because what do you talk about? What do you do in your spare time rather than just go to playgrounds,
Yeah.
So I mean, it definitely gets deeper when you have someone who actually that you share the same interests in something.
Yeah.
I definitely get that. And I think there's been a shift 6 years ago. I would say it was a lot more retirees who were moving to Portugal, especially a lot more, I think, British, German, and Algarve has kind of been known for that, right? And then it kind of made lists for Portugal. So for Americans, because Portugal wasn't really on a lot of the lists. A lot of it was, down south of the US. So you get Mexico, you get Costa Rica, you get Ecuador, places like that. And so now all of a sudden people are thinking, oh, I can retire in Europe. Like what a great option that is. So we kind of saw that, evolution. And then it's moved even past that with people, especially, a silver lining, I guess, of COVID is that companies are allowing people to work remotely. So it's like, okay, I can still have my job and my family can live here. I can maybe have a better work-life balance, or I can live in Europe, which has always been a dream of mine and my family. It opens up different doors for my family. So now I think we're seeing it's, there's still a lot of retirees that are coming here, but then you're shifting to families as well, which is nice. But, obviously families are still really spread out. I think in Porto, we find there's more of them, because it's a big city. So you have maybe more options for networking parents who need, work stuff, but then also schools, things like that. So sometimes I think some of the smaller towns, they're still lacking in the expat families just because it's not always conducive to the certain lifestyle that people are looking for right away. So you still get the retirees that are going to some of these smaller places like where you are, and less families because of maybe amenities and resources, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have managed to meet loads of families though, which is good.
It's good.
But it's taken us a while. But yeah, like our kids, I mean, one of them's just had his birthday and our house was full of kids.
That's good. That's exciting. It's
coming in from different areas as well, So it's great fun. They definitely don't feel like they're on their own or anything. And we've got friends that we meet at particular pubs. Like there's some great places, with bouncy castles and stuff. So we've got different friends for different things, I guess. And we've got lots of pseudo grandparents around as well. So we've got all these wonderful. I mean, we do love loads of our good retired friends. Who maybe miss their grandchildren. And then they've got kind of pseudo grandchildren, and we've got pseudo parents, pseudo grandparents. So we're all kind of matching up.
Yeah.
But expats don't always stay, lots do. Like you mentioned, so many Americans went from the north to the south, to New Mexico and stuff. And I've seen lots of people come from New Mexico to Europe. So the kinds of people that move one place might also then move again. If you've got the guts to do it. and you feel fit enough to do it and you want to explore more. So I think, expats do have a tendency to move around a little bit more.
Yeah. I think that is the mindset too. So that is hard when you connect with a family or someone and then, life takes them somewhere else. So that's always a difficult thing, but something to definitely think about as an expat for sure. But it's really nice to see this evolution of like more people feeling comfortable coming at any stage of life, whether that's, a lot more like single women have been reaching out to us and like, can I do this? I'm thinking about doing this. Maybe, they're divorced or their spouse passed or they were never married or their kids are older or whatever it is, like, but now they've their technology has really helped with that, right? They feel really, like a lot more comfortable to do this. So you got a whole array of people in different stages of life come into Portugal, which is really nice to see how that's changing.
Yeah, I just think we're really, really blessed. It's a really nice pace as well. We're not by any means like the bulk of the expats. One thing I have noticed is there's a lot more Brazilian people coming in, and that's really great as well. I really love the energy of the Brazilians, and they're really quite family oriented as well. And there's lots of people that are really curious about foreign kids and foreign families. We live in a little neighborhood. We picked a really suburban house just on the outskirts of town, and we thought, oh yeah, we're moving into this really suburban area. There's going to be loads of kids. There's going to be loads of kids for our kids to play with as well. And actually, a lot of them are holiday homes.
So
there are a few kids. Yeah, there are a few kids. And funnily enough, an American family just literally moved in across the road with kids. And they mentioned that they watch you guys and they knew us as well, which is really weird. They like moved in, looked, and were like really surprised.
Wait a second.
Yeah. So we had some conversations with them. But apart from that, we've got Portuguese neighbours that also speak French, which is great for me because I speak French, and pidgin Portuguese. But, everyone's really friendly and respectful. Like, we just had Halloween. I heard this kind of, psst, Louisa. And like my neighbours are like holding bags of sweets over the wall, for our kids.
Aww.
Which is really nice.
Yeah.
So we're starting to settle down a little bit and, get
it's
roots.
Really nice. Portuguese overall are just so family friendly, which I really love. It makes it so much easier just to have a great lifestyle where you can go out, to restaurants and it's okay. It's acceptable to have your kids there. The Portuguese are, waving at them. And, so I do love being able to raise a child here in Portugal, which is nice. And then you were mentioning Brazil's the same. A lot of Brazilians are coming here, which makes sense because of the language. But then also I think, Portugal is much safer than Brazil right now, especially. So we have some friends who have kids and they wanted their kids to grow up in a safe environment, So Portugal is just a great option for Brazilians. So we see a lot of Brazilians who are here as well, which is nice to get the mix, of the different nationalities, to be able to, just let your kids kind of see like this is the world, right? We're living in a more international type world. Again, back to technology as well, allowing that, but just being an expat as well.
Yeah, I think they get a much broader perspective when they're hanging around with other expat children and children from all nationalities. It just makes the world seem a lot more accessible to them. And of course, a lot of families now aren't necessarily that nuclear, like there might be, like their friends might have parents that have got older children from other marriages and things like that. So, some of our kids' friends have got brothers and sisters in other countries doing other things. In fact, our three have, my husband Carly's got two older daughters, and two grandchildren. And so one lives in England, one lives in Italy, so all of these, as we're sort of connecting and then learning more about each other's families, it's just, I don't know, things are just so much more expanded.
Yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity.
It's a great, time to be living, I guess, obviously there's been a lot of ups and downs with other things going on, but to look on the bright side of things, like like you're saying, being blessed and just being able to have this opportunity, and Portugal's providing this opportunity for us and for our kids, which is really, really awesome.
Yeah, it's very special. It really truly is. Yeah. I couldn't imagine being back home. I was talking to some friends back home, And that's where I really notice a difference. Now, I haven't actually been back to the UK. It's going to be 6 years in December.
Okay.
I just haven't.
So when you left, you haven't been back. Like
I went
when you
back.
went back, right?
I went back 2.5 months in.
Okay.
My mother had a stroke and she was quite poorly, and they didn't want me to go over and crowd them or anything. But when my mum was able to have visitors, they said, yeah, come back and say hello.
Okay.
And so it just so happened to coincide with the time when it was starting to get colder. And when we moved here and we thought, oh, it's 1,000 kilometres south of England, we're not going to need jumpers or coats or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so we'd put all of our winter clothes in storage in the UK with a lot of our things, because we didn't shift everything over in one go. We wanted to be, a little bit cagey, like kind of dancing
Check it
between two
out.
countries for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
Yeah. And so within the first 2.5 months, we realised we needed a lot of warm clothes.
All that
we went
stuff
back-
you left.
Yeah, we went back to visit my mum, check she was all right, and also to fill our suitcases full. Like we came with empty suitcases, filled them up with winter clothes, and then came back. But I've spoken to like friends about what's going on in their kids' lives and stuff back in the UK, and I'm hearing some real horror stories. And obviously it's not like that for everyone, but like where we used to live in Devon, I've heard of all sorts of things, where violence is on the rise and there's a lot of difficulties in schools. There's just, it just sounds very stressed.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to kind of name it really and say society's falling apart, because I think if you talk about it, it kind of happens. But from what I'm hearing, people aren't as contented. There you go. That's an easier way of talking about it. People don't seem to be happy in their lives as much as they were.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't have that. Things got hard, I think, like a couple of years in, because I think, the honeymoon period wears off and then it's your reality, and, and you've got lots of things there's a lot of grieving, I think, that goes on without realizing, you within your first year, you'll realize that there's loads of birthdays of loved ones that you don't get to spend with them. You have your own birthdays, you're not with your family and stuff. And there's all these different things that you don't quite consider before you move away. But like now, 6 years on, like we just feel like life is getting better and better and better.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting more and more established. We're getting ourselves back on track. It takes a while. Well, it took us a while. I know some people are super organized. They know exactly what they're doing, where they're going to be living, how it all works. Good for them.
Yeah. No, that's not you.
It's really not us.
Yeah.
We've taken a very sort of circuitous route, and I think we are back in our vibe again. We're sort of like heading in the right direction.
That's good to know, though, just because sometimes even someone who is organized and who says, I know exactly where I want to be, that doesn't mean it's going to pan out the way you thought, right? So just being flexible to the idea of that you might, fall away for a little bit and whatever that looks like, and just, soldier on and chat with other expats who are going through the same thing or who have gone through it already, because that's so helpful. Because sometimes I think that's a thing like what we were talking about earlier, where expats have the same mentality with things. So when you talk with family back in, your home country, or friends that maybe you grew up with that you've been lifelong friends, but they chose a different route, they don't understand it, right? They don't understand when you talk about certain things that are difficult as an expat. So that's where you can really connect with the different expats in your community or just around the country that you're living in, to make that connection and understand and help each other through those things, right?
Definitely. And because I've lived in quite a few different countries, not as many as you guys, but I'm actually in touch with most of my expat friends from other countries as well.
Yeah.
Because I made really solid bonds with them. And so I'm still in touch with people from like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And of course, like the internet facilitates that, doesn't it? I was chatting to my friend from Bali today for an hour.
Uh-huh.
It's really easy. So I think that has also helped, because if I can't find it immediately here, I've still got other contacts and a context to have those relationships in.
Yeah.
Like when we moved here just over 2 years ago, we were buying in furniture and it was starting to feel like, oh, okay, we're renting, but it feels like this is a kind of semi-permanent home. And right before Christmas, I just burst into tears. All of a sudden, I just thought, what have I done? I've taken our kids away from England. I've taken them away from the potential family. God, I wish I had my family around me. Sorry, so I whacked the table, my camera wobbled. And I just thought, oh gosh, like when I was growing up, every Christmas we'd go to the same place, the same people would be there. And it just occurred to me that my kids weren't growing up with that same sense of consistency, and that feeling of being held by a community. And I felt a terrible amount of guilt about, what impact that might have on our kids. I now realize that actually our kids actually feel really quite held anyway. And they're not even looking for it. It just doesn't. I think that was just something that I experienced, but they've never really experienced it. We've moved around a lot. They've always actually felt safe because I don't know, the way we do it has felt okay, and we've always been together. But yeah, for me, it was obviously one of my values I wasn't ready to give up on. And I had to have a real good cry. I was a little bit down for a few days.
Yeah.
Not too long, but it's just, I guess, we have these expectations and ways of being, and every now and again you'll get triggered. It's
That's
guaranteed.
True. Yeah. Especially
have you had any moments like that? I know you've been away for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, we've been doing it for so long. I think it's a little different now that we have a child, right? I think it surprised me. It hit Josh a little harder than me last time we went back, and we were able, because when we left, she was 9 months old. So she met some of the cousins, not all of them, but some of them, and they were older, so they remember her, but she obviously doesn't remember them.
Yeah.
So then we were back, in March, April of this year, and she's older and can play and can, realize we've been talking with these people on the screen, these are my cousins. And so it was nice to see that, right? To see connecting with family. And so Josh was like, maybe we should go back a little more often, because in the past we wouldn't, we would travel, we would go different places, we'd spend holidays elsewhere. So now it's like, okay, so maybe we need to make sure that we keep those connections stronger than when it was just the two of us. So, things change obviously when you have kids, and you think about, you want them to have a relationship with their family, even if it's, we don't live in the same country. But so you get that a little bit, and I think that's something good for people to realize when they move, no matter what stage of life they're in, whether they're moving and they've kids who are adults, it's going to be different. And it's tough because in the States, the states are so big, so you might live in a completely different state from your family member, and so you're not seeing them daily anyway. But then when you move into a different country, it feels a little different as well. Even though it's like, well, I wasn't actually seeing them daily, and I was talking to them on the phone, and that's going to literally be the exact same thing I'm going to do here. But it feels a little different because you're so much further away. So if something happens or something, But yeah, it's just good to make sure that you keep up the connections. You have to be intentional about keeping those connections, because if you're not, then it can very easily, fall away, and it can go, you realize, oh my gosh, I haven't spoken with so-and-so in a month or something, so you have to be intentional about it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And also, if you're in a different time zone, that can really also create some issues, because you're used to talking to people at the same time, and you can't. So like you say, you have to be intentional. I mean, we've met expats who came over and had the intention of flying back to America to visit their grandchildren. But they had the intention of doing it maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And then in the year that they moved over, the prices of travel just shot through the roof. And, that was going to create such a pressure on their lifestyle that in the end, they moved back. Because it was really difficult. So it's a lot easier from us, from the UK to Portugal. I think the prices have gone up quite a bit. And we heard from somebody recently that it was actually better to travel to Vigo, in Spain.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and then fly from there, because there's cheap flights there. So I think that's what we'll do.
I had a friend do that actually. She's British, and she did that. She was visiting Porto and then went up to Vigo and then flew from there. So
there's always a way.
Little hacks, yeah. Yeah, but it is so true. You just have to, I think people just need to understand that it's just going to be different, right? And there will be times that you grieve, and times that you are excited because you're, ready to host your family. They come visit or whatever that might look like. But it's not for everyone. Some people do go back to where, their home country is.
Yeah.
Well,
it makes us richer, I think. Maybe not financially, but But it does bring a richness to life. We have different experiences. I'm so grateful for them. Really am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Same with us. So grateful. And then grateful to pass it on to our child, right? To the kids. And then they can choose if they want to go back to the country they're born in or they're from, or continue on the crazy expat lifestyle as well. They have options, right?
I mean, our 4-year-old, he thinks he is American, Portuguese, British. He thinks he's got 3 nationalities.
And there's no American in there, right?
No, there's no American in there at all. But I think that's, because he watches a bit of YouTube and Netflix.
Yeah,
so, like
everything.
Everything is Americanized. I think that is another difference, actually, I've noticed. Because I think even like Portuguese culture is probably influenced a lot by internet culture. So, for instance, our kids, our older kids in particular, really like Minecraft. And so there's loads of Minecraft channels, for like young teens. And they're nearly always American. And there'll be Portuguese children watching those as well. There'll be Italian children, Spanish children. I've got my own channel, Feel Good Astrology, and I'm having people from Europe like watching, so they're learning things from loads of people are watching English speaking channels a lot. And so again, like teenagers growing up now, even if they're Portuguese, aren't going to be as Portuguese as they were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They're understanding American references. Our kids are understanding American references. And so like their cultural standpoint and like their music, their fashion, everything's influenced by a slightly more generalized, point of attraction. Things are less individual.
Yeah. It's more global, right? Things
Definitely
are less
more
individual.
global.
And less nationalistic or country centric, I suppose, because you have access now. Again, back to technology. I feel like this has been a lot about technology, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, just think what's going to happen with AI as well, without getting all doom and gloom. You're right. I mean, everything is getting global. And so we might not notice the impact of it right now. But when the young Portuguese people come into their kind of ascendancy or something, as they're coming into work and as they're probably just going to be speaking English a lot more. I mean, when I go to not fashion shops, because I'm not really a sort of fashion consumption person, but like if I go to a shop, in particular clothes shops, even though I might be in Tamar or somewhere in deepest, darkest Portugal, if I go into a shop, they've nearly always got their signs now. A lot of their signs are in English.
Yeah.
I was looking at was it Springfield or somewhere like that? And behind the counter, all of the signage is in British or American,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Like, why? I mean, it just is, isn't it? There's still so many more Portuguese, but all of a sudden the English language is infiltrating everywhere. So, I think, whilst we don't notice it so much now, in 20 years' time, this could be a lot more English. There's going to be a lot more English spoken, I think, which could really change a culture. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, we do live in interesting times.
Yeah, and AI will facilitate that.
Yeah, that will change things too.
But it will most likely also bring in more opportunities as well, because it could bring in more sort of global working options and things like that. It could, I think for our children growing up in international communities and understanding what it's like to have different cultures nearby, and of course we just got Spain not that far away. We are, we can get out and about in Europe and stuff. So our kids are meeting European kids, American kids from all over the world. As they get older, I think they could easily work in these kind of really diverse working groups, because so many people work from home now. I mean, that's another big difference. So many people work from home. Like when I was living in France, I couldn't work from home. I didn't even have a mobile phone. I was only like 20. So I was working for a French campsite owner, and I've worked in different places that I've lived in, but they were always owned by the nationals of those countries, Now you don't need to. So both Carl and I work from home. We work for ourselves, and we work with English speaking people predominantly. It's only when we step outside of our house that we're really in Portugal.
It's a tricky
different.
balance, right? A
Yeah.
tricky balance, just with how things are. It's like there's pros and cons to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could be living anywhere in the world and pretty much have the same life we've got now.
Yeah.
Apart from, when we want to go to the beach.
Well, then let's end on this, because you could be doing this anywhere, but you've chosen Portugal, and
Definitely.
you're, I don't want to say like putting down roots, but becoming more comfortable in that sense. So
Yeah.
why have you chosen Portugal then, if you could be anywhere in the world doing what you're doing?
Well, that's a great question. I'd never been to Portugal. I literally, when I came, that was my first visit. Carl had been before. So I'd lived in France, Italy, and Bali in Indonesia, and somewhere else.
It's been so long.
So
long ago.
It will come into my mind after. And so when I met Carl, he said, I'm actually planning on moving to Portugal. And I said, what was it like? And he said, well, it's really green and there's lots of hills and mountains and river beaches and things like that. I mean, he was obviously talking about central Portugal, which is where he'd been. And he showed me pictures and I thought, wow, that really reminds me of Bali, because, Bali has quite a lot of height and it's really green. And I thought, wow, that's kind of nice. And then we chatted about it. I learned a little bit more about it. It was more affordable. So obviously, if we were going to go to Europe, I would have imagined us going to France because we both speak French, and I've lived there for 5 years. But it was really expensive by comparison. And at the time, when we were wanting to move away, it was because we both wanted to work for ourselves. We didn't want to have full-time jobs if we could avoid it. Not because we're work shy, but because we're old parents. Carl had kids when he was really young who are now grown up, but, we were older parents and I wanted to have time with my children. I'd spent years working, really, really hard. So I wanted to spend time with them. And we knew in the UK we would need to either be really, really in well-paid jobs, to be able to work part-time and to be able to spend time with our children. We just knew it wasn't possible. And also we wanted to have that feeling of a bit more space. Like you were saying, children in Portugal, in restaurants and things, they love kids. Sorry, God, that's another thing about Portugal. There's flies around. I need my fly zapper. But they love kids here. In England, it's not so apparent. They're seen as a bit of a pain. And I remember one night going to visit, I think, Carl's mum, and it was quite late and our kids were awake and we were walking through this station and there were no kids. There's no kids anywhere. And it's in London. There should have been other families, but where were they? All the kids were in bed or something.
Yeah.
In Portugal, they really quite like a late night and kids are part of life. And that's what we wanted. And we knew we could get that in Europe. So yeah, we thought we'd come to Portugal and see if we liked it. And it just felt really, we went to a couple of their festas and it reminded me a little bit of that vibe I was talking about that I missed for my children, that I experienced as a child, where we would go to the same place and, there was grannies, great grandparents, aunties, uncles, cousins, and that kind of thing. I grew up with that kind of energy. And yeah, I can't replicate it here. But when we went to the festas, the parties that people have in their villages, we got a sense of that. That was still happening. And that felt really, really good. Yeah. So it feels like it's a bit like Portugal feels like it's maybe culturally 20 to 30 years behind where the UK is. And that's not to say that the Portuguese are backward in any way. What I mean is the family values still seem to be really persistent. And we just wanted to indulge on that as much as possible.
Yeah. So in a good
and we've
way.
not regretted it. Yeah, it's totally good. It's all good.
Oh, great. Well,
yeah.
Louisa, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. When I got that invite, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
how
it's been a
fun.
couple of years, so let's have a good chat.
Well, it's a nice vibe, isn't it? It's a nice little girly chat, like woman to woman, mother to mother. I really like that.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.